Welcome to my end of 2020 intuitive and tarot horoscopes / messages for the zodiac signs. My advice to you all would be to look at the video that corresponds to your rising sign, moon sign, or your sun sign. If you're born during the day, I'd especially recommend looking at the sun sign horoscope, or look at your moon sign horoscope if that's what you feel called to. These short videos are primarily designed to go along with your rising sign, but just feel free to go along with whatever sign you feel called to, which again may or may not be your moon or sun sign. I also want to put forth a disclaimer that these aren't necessarily astrologically derived messages or interpretations. Like, I didn't look at the transits according to each rising sign, but what I'm really doing is just relaying whatever message Spirit feels called to give to each of you according to whatever sign resonates with you or is embodied most strongly in your chart. These videos are intended to help ease the transition from 2020 to 2021, but some of these, I feel like, from what I remember, do actually extend into 2022 or beyond. This is really about looking at what challenges or situation you're going through right now, or whatever lesson it is that you're participating in, and then Spirit is just relaying whatever guidance best suits this kind of moment that you're going through. These are, of course, designed to be general enough to apply to a great variety of you simultaneously. Always gotta be a dog barking in this neighborhood. These are, of course, general enough to apply to many people simultaneously, but of course, if you'd like a more nuanced, more personalized reading, you're welcome to book one at the link below. Okay, so this message is going to go out to Libra placements, especially those of you who have a Libra ascendant, sun, or moon. So right off the bat, what I'm getting for Libras is I'm seeing you sort of like with your feet outstretched, sort of like if there was a hole in the earth kind of widening beneath you and trying to keep your balance and keep your feet on separating parts. It feels like you're resisting a situation in which you're being called to surrender. I'm feeling like for a lot of you that may have to do with love and relationships. It feels like you're holding back from fully feeling what you're feeling in a more human way, in the fullest extent possible, regardless of whatever that means for you, like emotionally. Just feel like there's something that you're holding back from. It's something that maybe terrifies you. I feel like you don't want to be in the wrong or to find yourself sort of among wreckage, or it feels like you're afraid of like this chasm because you're afraid if you fall in, like you're gonna I see you sort of like walking and it's sort of like detritus. It feels like sort of wreckage, and I'm getting for some of you that is in regard to past relationships. I'm getting the words haunted. For some of you it may have to do with maybe events in your life in the past that kind of felt traumatic or brought up experiences that either were actually like consisted of trauma for you, or that felt sort of that way. And that, again, that's why I'm getting the haunted feeling, and I'm getting the 9 of Swords. I feel like you're being called to trust, but you don't want to let go of your guard. I feel like you're holding something like this and you're holding all these swords. So what that means, and they're showing me like 7 of Swords, they're showing me different like sword suits, cards from tarot, but what I seeing the swords, I mean, what that really means is like holding on to different thoughts, right? And it's like, it's these thoughts, it's these sort of like what if scenarios that you sort of use to protect yourself, because you're saying like, what if this goes wrong? What if it's like this? What if it's this way? And there are ways that your ego is trying to shield yourself from total vulnerability. And with the 7 of Swords having come up, it really has to do with you kind of like isolating yourself. I feel like you kind of are you're keeping your foot away from the water. I see like you're almost about to dip your toe into some water, but then you're like, oh, and then you kind of pull your foot back, and you kind of keep to the earth even though your feet are exposed. And I feel there's something about the land that's kind of pushing you toward the water. There's a situation, even if it's not active right now, but there's some topic of your life that you're just sort of afraid of going into your emotions about. And I just feel like there's something about the circumstances and the way they're gonna unfold, especially December, December. I'm getting December is going to be, there's going to be a big like impetus, there's going to be a lot of momentum, some kind of like stirring of the pot, and it's going to make you feel like you're going to be pushed into that water, maybe without you asking for it, maybe without you consenting to, like, you know, the universe being like, you know what, you're just gonna be dunked in and you're gonna be pushed into this emotional situation anyway, you know, even if it feels messy, even if it feels like there is some kind of upheaval for you, or again, you know, it feels like a situation where you're not totally in control of what's happening, and you're definitely not in control of your emotions. But again, Spirit is asking you to like let go. I see the swords sort of clattering, they're following out, especially like once you've kind of plunged into the water a bit. I see these like fears kind of you letting them go and tapping into yourself in a more intuitive way. I'm seeing the High Priestess card. So what that means is like going into your, you know, inner awareness of what's actually true and seeing the bigger picture things outside from that immediate reactivity, you know, of the ego and of these fears that again are meant to protect you from getting hurt again, you know. I just keep getting like self-protection, because what I mean by that, and if you didn't understand what I was saying earlier, is like sometimes we have these thoughts or these questions as a means of keeping ourselves back from an opportunity, or, you know, something that has come up that, you know, we don't want to engage with fully. We don't want to fully psychologically process. You know, so with the swords, you know, I will just give a few examples. So it's sort of like, you know, if you start connecting with someone in whatever way, even if it's platonic, it could be like, oh, what if they don't really like me? Or what if they're just bored? Or like, you know, what if they're just bored right now with the pandemic and they don't really like me that much and as a friend? Or like, what if I'm actually bothering them? It's like all these different, you know, kind of like anxious thoughts, or like, you know, what if they like all these people better than me and like they don't really have time for me? It's like things like that. And it's fears that I feel like have been rooted from situations I'm getting, especially like in the near past. Like, I feel like for some of you this may seed back to like maybe 2017-ish, of like this sort of story that was slowly like, I feel like I don't know if I want to say seeded, but it feels like there was like a burrowing underground. There was something that was kind of occurring maybe towards like the later end of 2017, but it goes deeper and deeper, and then it sort of like I don't know if it's like bubbled up this year, but there's something, they're telling me like Mars retrograde through Aries, something about that kind of coming to the surface in a bigger way this year for you. And I feel the sense of false starts, delays, challenges, and all of that, and that having come up for you and kind of again pushed you to get a little bit closer, and you're feeling something about your situation or your stance that is just not really sustainable for you anymore, and it feels like you're kind of just barely holding on, but you can feel the universe pushing you towards something that you maybe don't want to confront. Some of you who have maybe strong gut feelings, you may know that it's a potentially difficult situation that's coming up. I'm sure some of you may already know like what theme or what circumstances or what relationship or, you know, whatever kind of situation it is that you're going through. I think some of you are going to be aware of what has come up for you within these past few months, especially with Mars having just exited its retrograde period, but still kind of moving back over its shadow period in Aries. So especially looking at that area in your chart, if you choose to. I know for Libra risings, that's going to be for most of you, like, well, all of you with whole sign houses, but really in your 7th house of one-on-one relationships. So what Spirit is urging you to do is like, I'm almost saying like, don't focus. Like I'm seeing like you want to put the glasses on, and they're saying no, like let it be blurry. They're saying you don't have to like understand the situation in a rational, objective way. I feel like you're used to sort of reasoning things out, but I feel like they kind of want you to go with the flow in a way where you're just trusting and you're kind of holding your hands out, and when you feel something, you're just letting it guide you, even though you can't see your not situation but circumstances clearly. And, you know, because I'm seeing everything blurry as if, you know, I'm a person with bad eyesight, and then, you know, the glasses are off, but it's really like have trust and have faith, because I'm seeing that, seeing the, what is it, High Priestess again for intuition, and sort of knowing that things are happening on sort of like a divine level or a spiritual level, and that things are happening as they're meant to play out. And I'm also seeing the Two of Swords, which is sort of like not letting your emotions get the best of you in one way, where those emotions I'm talking about have to do with fear. So don't let your fear get the best of you, but then also like don't, you know, have your guard up so high that you're not able to fully engage, because I'm seeing that blindfold. But there is something about, you know, keeping yourself in the dark that is useful right now, because I am seeing the moon card. So actually there is an element again of the Two of Swords being helpful, where, you know, not seeing things from like a rational light, and really just being in the darkness is going to help these inner truths come up. It's like this feeling of how can something wrong be right, but then it's realizing that there are truths, there are situations, there are feelings, there are relationships, there are connections that go beyond right and wrong, that there's going to be things that transcend our ability to reason, and where it's not going to be so clear cut, and it's just part of the human experience, and it's part definitely of a spiritual experience. And that's definitely what we came here for, right? When we, I mean, depending on your view, but, you know, when you incarnated, or just, you know, whatever way you look at it, whatever's coming up now is to help you tune into those things, and to really come into a greater feeling of your own humanity, and feeling the full range and spectrum of emotions and of experiences and connections that you can on this earth. There's something about the situation that is kind of bringing that into focus for you. It's about understanding yourself more completely, and more humanely, and really having that compassion for yourself, even as you're going through things that feel like they may not make sense. So I hope that was clear for some of you. If you're not, you can definitely leave a question, you know, you can leave it if you're not sure exactly what I was trying to say, especially for the bits that are a little bit more abstract. But ideally, like that message translated for at least most of you that are watching it, especially those of you with Libra placements. But yeah, there's going to be some situation that's come up, and you're gonna the universe is definitely pushing you towards something, and you kind of, I feel like you can kind of sense that it's coming. Definitely December is going to be a hot spot for a lot of you all. But I feel like for some of you, it's seeding into something else down the road, maybe end of 2021, where it feels like a book is being thrown away, and then you're kind of like leaping into the arms of something. It could be like a person if it's like a love interest, but it could also, you know, represent an opportunity or a different kind of connection. But it's about jumping into the arms of something, and kind of giving abandon to, you know, looking at things in a rational way of learning. It feels like you're going to learn from a hands-on experience. That's what Spirit's telling me right now, is this whole situation is for you to learn hands-on instead of doing things by the book. That's your lesson, it seems to be, for this time period. So again, if you want to book a personalized reading so that you understand more so what's coming up for you specifically, you're definitely welcome to do so. Libra placements, I'll leave that with you. Okay, so this message is for Scorpio placements, especially those of you who have Scorpio rising, sun, or moon. And what I'm getting is Spirit is showing me, getting a few different tarot cards. So they're showing me the Seven of Swords. They are showing me the top of a mountain. It's kind of like a cliff-like mountain. And I'm also seeing the Fool card, but it's sort of like a question of the Fool. It's sort of like a consideration, because they're showing the Seven of Cups, which shows envisioning possibilities. It's about kind of brainstorming or fantasizing about something that may or may not actually be possible for you, depending on how you view things. So what they're telling me right now is there's a mothering aspect to your life. I feel like there's something about 2020 where something has almost come full circle. I'm seeing like a circle, like something's almost finished loading, and they're telling me mothering aspect. So for some of you, sure, it could be literal and having to do with a mother or a mother figure. For some of you, it could just have to do with how you're nourished and fed, but I am feeling like for some of you, there's going to be that question of a maternal figure coming to play, and that includes if that person has felt absent or not, or if that energy has felt absent from your life or not. I am getting, for those of you, if it's not maybe your mother, there's definitely, it seems like for some of you there's like a maternal figure. There's someone older, they may have felt like a mentor, or you may have found yourself wanting that. There's sort of a complication around like this mothering energy for you in your life that's kind of come up to the surface a little bit. And I'm getting the month of November 2020, which is this month of filming. So there's something about that for you where it feels like maybe something's missing, or you wanted to connect a little bit more. I am getting the feeling that some of you have wanted to kind of connect to your heritage more, or tie into something that feels like a grounding space for the world around you, especially for your maybe your emotions. Because I'm seeing sort of like, I'm getting that feeling of like a nocturnal, feminine, sort of like divine mother energy, which is something that stabilizes. Something that, like, even though, you know, it seems like kind of ethereal, maybe like, oh, it has to do with the moon, but there's something about the moon that also grounds us in your body, especially for those of you familiar with traditional astrology and traditional takes on the moon. There's something about that mothering aspect that can really ground us into ourselves and our feeling of maybe belonging on the planet. So some of you, I feel like there's a bit of like a discord or a feeling of having been untethered a little bit and trying to like kind of reconnect yourself, because it almost feels like for some of you, you've noticed or realized that something is a bit amiss. There's something about you, again, wanting to connect to some type of mother energy. So I'm getting the feeling that for some of you, I am getting the feeling of potentially a literal figure, or again, it could be abstract, or again, it may be a person that's not your literal mother, but more so a maternal or mentor figure. But I'm seeing, for some of you, I'm seeing like a mother in the kitchen, but she seems sort of like distracted. She feels a little bit cold or aloof. I'm just getting the feeling of, for some of you, of like looking at someone that was kind of like more so attuned to their own responsibilities of kind of what they were busy with at the moment, and they weren't as emotionally welcome or friendly. There might have been something almost like a little bit reproachful about them, where they kind of viewed you as like a task or something to be managed. So for some of you with Scorpio placements, it feels like that's something that's kind of come up, where you feel maybe a disconnect to this person, whoever they may be in your life. But there's definitely, you know, what Spirit is conveying to me right now is sort of like the end of 2020. It feels like almost there. I feel like this is more so like, it feels like definitely November thing for those of you who are going to watch this in shortly after release of the video, because again, I'm filming sort of like mid to late November, but it feels like there is something that almost stops short of like the end of 2020. So it doesn't feel like it goes through like maybe the end of December, but it feels like a little situation or a little like a huddling of your internal self, or you're like kind of doing like a, yeah, just like a kind of a time out huddle with yourself, I guess, and kind of gathering your thoughts and feelings and kind of assessing the situation, because they are showing me the Seven of Swords right now to represent that, that gathering of facts, that information, and kind of like a solitary, very fact-based way. And I kind of see the Two of Swords, which is a tarot card, and that represents right now, it has to do with you, that feeling of disconnect, but also of you kind of like going into your emotional and like internal world in a way where you're not really like pushing, but you're like seeing what's there. There seems to be a combination of different just sort of like internal attitudes, where one, you're like gathering facts, but then it also feels like once you do that, you're letting things kind of simmer on the pot and not really coming to any final conclusions or decisions. It feels like Spirit is relaying messages to you, for those of you who pay attention to these things. If you're like looking through books and things catch your eye, or if you're having dreams, or you notice things in the real world, especially if you go for walks and if you see something that feels sort of like an omen, or it feels symbolic in some way, pay attention to it. And, you know, if you feel so called, like look it up to see what it means, because it feels like they're trying to transmit different messages to you. I feel like they're giving me like ET phone home vibes, but something about Spirit kind of wanting to relay messages to you about this mothering energy and letting you know that like you are at home, and that even though it feels on a surface level like there's something missing, that there's a maternal energy missing for you, or a nurturing aspect of your life missing, where it feels like maybe you've had to take care of yourself, because I'm seeing like you're sick and then you're sort of like eating chicken noodle soup, but it feels like it was something that was like, I see a microwave, so it feels like something that you know, there's that, when you see chicken soup being microwaved and that's what you're eating when you're sick, it's sort of like you're missing that element of like a mother who like cooked that on the stove for you. There's something that's a little bit like, well, you know, country girls make do type of thing. Like, I'm just gonna eat what's available to me, and I'm gonna have to just sort it in the microwave and feed myself and nourish myself that way. So there's that feeling of sort of depletion, because I'm seeing that, like, you know, if you had a cold, which is, you know, representative of what you might feel inside. And it's just really about unpacking all of these different things for you, and knowing that, you know, Spirit is saying it is for a reason, and things unfolded for a reason, and they want you to know that patterns came up in your life for a reason, and it was meant to help you grow. There's something about the mothering aspect in your life, whether it was there, or, you know, if it was complicated, or if there was distance with someone who is aloof, you know, whatever complications were there, if it was absent or, you know, again, present with different issues, it's really for you to tap into that mothering energy. They're telling me like on a divine level. There's something about there being a spiritual contemplation to understanding what maternal energy is, what mothering energy is, what it feels like to nurture and ground somebody and to stabilize them so that their emotions kind of like don't run amok, but so that they feel grounded, both emotionally, potentially even physically, astrologically as well. It's about having that sense of belongingness on the planet and in your body and in your life. So there's something spiritual again about this contemplation, about that energy and its absence or presence with complications, as I mentioned. And Spirit is letting you know that it's something that's like, it's like a mini hurdle, just this little like kind of the thing that you're thinking about or going through. I think especially as the holidays are approaching for some of you, this may have become a more relevant sort of like topic of thought. But they're saying it's a mini hurdle, and it's like, they're giving me a sense of like obstacle attack, or not attack, but more like momentum. Like they're showing me the 8 of Wands to show momentum. It feels like there's going to be kind of like a blast of energy, and they're showing me like a rocket taking off. And it feels like this is sort of like going into the end of, I'm seeing if it's 2021 or 2022. It feels like it's kind of like in between, or it's kind of like end of 2021 potentially, with that momentum kind of trailing into 2022. And that's kind of what I'm getting. There's something about what you're experiencing now. So there's something about what you're experiencing now with this mini hurdle that kind of has some after effects or some aftershocks. Not aftershocks, like it's not a negative thing, but there's something about this energy or this contemplation that you're going through now that is going to tie into you having greater inspiration and momentum coming up later on in the year. I feel like there's almost like a feeling of mentorship, like you're taking on a mantle of some sort, if that's the right phrase to use, but I'm seeing the strength card, and there's something about the endurance that you build and you lifting weights and going through this emotional process around nurturing that's going to make you feel more capable of being a leader later on. And I'm definitely feeling that for some of you with these Scorpio placements, you're gonna feel that like 2021, 2022, especially like 2022, it feels like you're gonna look at yourself in the mirror and you're gonna see almost like, kind of looks like a battle scar like on your face, but you kind of look like, I'm kind of getting like Mad-Eye Moody from like Harry Potter, but like the actual like Mad-Eye Moody, not like the fake one, but I don't want to go into Harry Potter right now. But it's sort of like, you know, when you have that wisdom and experience, when you've been through tough situations, and I'm seeing sort of a line to represent that leadership for you, and kind of stepping up to the plate. There's something about, you know, when you're missing something that can help provoke you or compel you to realize different capabilities and strengths that you had in yourself that you didn't really realize were there prior, right? So there's something, you know, there's something sort of like provoking this process for you and this uncovering, but it's something that you do through strength building, because I'm seeing again you building weight. So it's something that you have to put intention and effort into in order to reap the dividends that are possible from this process of, again, spiritual contemplation. You know, again, so thinking, I'm gonna tie everything together. So just absence or complication of mothering, maternal, nurturing energy, and then spiritual contemplation, which is going on right now. It's a mini hurdle. And then, you know, if you choose to strength build, you know, so to speak, at least emotionally, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, you know, in doing that from that situation, there's something about the potential, and I'm seeing seed, like Ace of Wands energy. And it's gonna feel like something new for you, but they're actually telling me that it's a continuation of what you've already been going through, and not exercise, but like leadership skills that you've exercised already or been building, and that's going to reach kind of a culmination point later on, where I'm seeing the death card, where it's like the end of one phase and the beginning of a new one. So hopefully that makes sense for those of you with Scorpio placements. It just feels like, you know, again, if it's not like overt leadership and leading other people, there's something about that energy maybe of leadership of your life, of really taking initiative with how you navigate your personal circumstances. There's just a feeling of commanding in a way, and in a good way. Like it feels like you're just captain of the ship in a way where you have greater experience, greater power, and just, you know, just a better hold and a better grasp of things. So those of you with Scorpio placements, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know if this does end up resonating for you. This may take a while to manifest, obviously, especially if you're waiting to see like whatever may come up for you later down the line, and especially 2021, 2022. And again, for 2021, it feels like later down the year, like almost like definitely near the end, at least, you know, I don't feel like it's going to be earlier than fall. That's kind of what I'm getting for the timeline. But yeah, for those of you who have questions, feel free to leave them for me. And if you'd like a personalized reading, I'm definitely available for those at this link on my website. And so I'm going to leave that message with you, Scorpio placements. This message is for those with Sagittarius placements, such as having a Sagittarius rising, moon, or sun. So For those of you Sagittarius placements, what they're showing me now, they are telling me like a reckoning of self or self-reckoning, and I'm seeing you look in the mirror. It's funny because I just feel like I see you in a bedroom that kind of has some stuff out. It feels like you were in the middle of reorganizing. I feel like it has to do with the reorganizing or a process of understanding yourself and you and kind of sorting those things out. Things that have to do with, you know, your expression, or they're telling me almost like self-expression, and matters of the self at hand. It feels like just a topic of like who you are, and it feels like you've been cleaning out maybe some skeletons in your closet, or it feels just sort of like you're in this maturing process, because I'm seeing you in a butterfly cocoon, and it feels like you're busy in there. It feels like you're actively like doing something. You could be like knitting or watching TV, but I feel like a strong like mental process, and they are showing me the Knight of Swords to underscore that. So it feels like, you know, you're passing time, you're sort of like gestating, and you're changing because you're going through metamorphosis, but it feels like you're sort of like awake. So, you know, I saw you knitting, I saw you like passing the time, and while you're passing the time, it feels like you're actively aware of sort of shedding an old skin, or, you know, again, of changing. You're in the middle of this process. And what they're showing me is a clue. They're showing me you looking in the mirror, but you look kind of like sad, or like a little bit jaded, or maybe a little bit more apathetic, or a little bit downcast, maybe disappointed in a way. And I'm seeing like smudges on your nose, but you're looking at yourself in the mirror. And I see like Santa Claus, and I'm seeing that you feel like you haven't been able to be so jolly anymore, and you haven't been able to have as much fun. It feels like for Sagittarius placements, it just feels like there's kind of more of like awareness and sort of like a newfound understanding of yourself. It feels like, you know, there's been habitual practices that, you know, you've been keeping up with, but that this year you've kind of been forced to like lay them down, because I'm seeing the imagery of like a treadmill, and Santa on a treadmill, and that the treadmill sort of comes to a slow, and then I don't know if it stops. It could potentially stop, but it's definitely slowing down. And the treadmill, that kind of has to do with, you know, you're kind of running in one place, you're not really going anywhere. It has to do with habits, it has to do with routines. A treadmill generally doesn't have such like a positive feeling to it. It feels like a little bit more neutral, maybe just slightly negative, just because it feels so like mundane and just routine and potentially, you know, monotonous. And so that's kind of what I'm getting. And what I'm getting from Spirit is that sort of coping mechanisms that have come up by celebrating, having fun, partaking in joy, feel a little bit different for you now. It feels like there's this ritual process, and especially they're telling me around your birthday. That's why they're giving me the sense of like your birthday last year, and things becoming a little bit more different now, obviously with the pandemic. And it feels like it's setting the stage also for something to come. 2021-2022 winter season, it feels like Sagittarius season. They are definitely giving me a theme of something coming up to light during the season that very much has to do with you, given that Sagittarius is so personal to you in your birth chart. It has to do with this sort of like maybe revelation or self-reckoning, or again self-understanding in some way. And it just feels like this year you've kind of had to shed some of your old like glory days. I see you kind of like dusting off like confetti, or just like I don't know if it's like a noisemaker, but it's something that has just like a metallic streamer at the end, just sort of like party favor type stuff. And I just feel like they're telling me like cleaning up your act, and I'm for some reason they're showing me like they're showing me Sister Act. And so I feel like I don't really remember the plot of that movie offhand, but what I'm getting is sort of like, I feel like she was undercover, right? Whoopi Goldberg. But so what I'm getting is that you're sort of like covert, or you're kind of testing something out. Like you're not sure if you want to commit to it. So that's why you're almost like in disguise, and you're sort of like in this church, but you're in the middle of like thinking about purifying yourself in some way, spiritually cleansing yourself and becoming a new person again. Feels like something you're still a little bit shy toward, and that's why you haven't fully stepped into the role. But there's definitely this purification process when it comes to embodying yourself more fully, maybe letting go of illusions, and maybe doing something where it's like, you know what, I don't really do that anymore, you know, potentially in the future. But you're kind of building up to that level of confidence and maturity and self-awareness. Sort of like, you know, someone offered you like a drink, and you didn't really feel like you just didn't want to do that, or you didn't feel like you needed to have fun. I just see you saying, no, you know, I'm good, like, no thank you. Again, this doesn't have to be literal. It could be literal for some of you, but it just feels like there's sort of like a partying fun aspect of a kind of being reckless and going wild, where that's just not really as applicable anymore. And there's something about this year with the pandemic where it's helped you realize that, like, that sort of topic has come to light, and it's made you realize like it's not really sustainable for you. They're giving me the words like unsustainable, and I feel like part of this sort of period is to help push you into more authentic awareness of self and realizing, you know, what are my limits, what are my boundaries, what are my limitations, like what do I actually feel like doing, rather than, you know, maybe inhabiting this kind of ego illusion of self where, you know, I just want to have fun and have, you know, no worries and be carefree all the time. And I feel like the reason this is probably coming up for you and why it's especially going to be potent this year, I mean, obviously we're in a pandemic, right? But also astrologically speaking, I know this offhand that Jupiter has been transiting Capricorn, and Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Sagittarius. But when it's in Capricorn, it's a lot more sober. You know, it answers to Saturn, which is almost like the opposite of Jupiter, where it's very serious, it's a little bit heavy, it's more reserved. It's really all about, you know, the pragmatic matters of life and kind of being like, you know, that figure that says like, you know, no is no, and we kind of have to hold back for the winter and we have to save, you know what I mean? Like do the hard thing now so that you can survive to later, instead of the Jupiterian take where it's just sort of like, let's live in the moment, let's be carefree, let's have fun, especially when that comes into play in the fire sign of Sagittarius. So Sagittarians, that's what is coming up for you. It just feels like sort of a shedding of old selves or the old illusions of self, and really letting go of these habits and different coping mechanisms that you've kind of put on to, you know, especially when you feel like you want to put on a brave face or like a good face toward the world, even though you may be holding maybe secret pains, or even though you may just feel differently from what you embody or portray externally. So again, this is a period where the opportunity is for you to self-reflect and to really understand mentally, consciously, like, you know, where it is you're coming from and what kind of face you want to put toward the world, and that kind of face being, you know, more aligned with your higher self, or your true sense of self, again. So just having all of those things aligned for you. And Sagittarius placements, they're showing me a couple cards. They're showing me the Justice card, and they're showing me the Judgment card, which shows like, I feel like they want you to keep your eyes open and remain self-aware and keep approaching yourself with that attitude of honesty and a just objective assessment, and not really like being overswayed, you know, or not being too swayed by your emotions or anything. I don't really feel like there's that energy right now. It feels like you're very cognizant of what's going on with your mental process at this time, and just your internal spiritual process, and, you know, all these different things going on. It doesn't really feel like you're in that much danger of that. That's why they're just encouraging you to continue with that attitude of just conscious, you know, mental processing, and you doing what you feel like is best for you. And with the Judgment card, that sort of confirming that it's sort of a spiritual challenge for you. It's like, how can I be my authentic self? With the Judgment card, it's often where situations come up, tough situations that challenge us to unveil or affirm our authenticity in some way, to, you know, act in a way that affirms what we really need, and who we really are on the deepest level, rather than kind of acting for short-term, you know, gratification, or again, just out of illusions of self, or what you feel like you need to embody, even though that may not be what you really are at the core. Sagittarians, feel free to leave a comment, especially if you have a question and would like me to clarify anything that I said in your portion of the video, especially if there were any symbols that I may not have analyzed fully or that I kind of skipped over quickly. I know I talk pretty fast, so definitely feel free to let me know if there's anything that I could just sort of like assess further for you, again, because I know that sometimes I have to just keep up with the vision that they're showing me. If you'd like to book a personalized reading, welcome to do so. I would love to provide more detail and nuance for you. You can do that at the link below. And thank you, Sagittarians, for watching this video.